Questioner: is there a technique for being aware? Krishnamurti: what does this question imply? You seek a method by which you may learn to be aware. Awareness is not the result of practice, habit, or time. As a tooth that causes intense pain has to be attended to immediately, so sorrow, if intense, demands urgent alleviation. But instead, we seek an escape, or explain it away. We avoid the real issue, which is the self. Because we are not facing our conflict, our sorrow, we assure ourselves lazily that we must make an effort to be aware. And so we demand a technique for becoming aware. The observer and the observed are one. The thinker and his thoughts are one. To experience the thinker and his thought as one is very arduous, for the thinker is ever taking shelter behind his thought. He separates himself from his thoughts to safeguard himself, to give himself continuity, permanency. He modifies or changes his thoughts, but he remains. This pursuit of thought apart from himself, this changing, transforming it, leads to illusion. The thinker is his thought. The thinker and his thoughts are not two separate processes. We generally regard our thoughts as being apart from ourselves. We are not aware of the thinker and his thought as one. This is precisely the difficulty. After all, the qualities of the self are not separate from the self. The self is not something apart from its thoughts, from its attributes. The self is put together, made up, and the self is not when the parts are dissolved. But in illusion, the self separates itself from its qualities in order to protect itself, to give itself continuity, permanency. It takes refuge in its qualities through separating itself from them. The self asserts that it is this and it is that. The self, the I, modifies, changes, transforms its thoughts, its qualities, but this change only gives strength to the self, to its protective walls. But if you are aware deeply, you will perceive that the thinker and his thoughts are one. The observer is the observed. To experience this actual integrated fact is extremely difficult, and right meditation is the way to this integration. The additive process prevents the experiencing of the real. Where there is accumulation, there is a becoming of the self, which is the cause of conflict and pain. The accumulative desire for pleasure and the avoidance of pain is a becoming. Awareness is non-accumulative, for it is ever discovering truth, and truth can only be when there is no accumulation, when there is no imitation. Awareness is observation without condemnation. Awareness brings understanding, because there is no condemnation or identification, but silent observation. Surely, if I want to understand something, I must observe. I must not criticize. I must not condemn. I must not pursue it as pleasure or avoid it as non-pleasure. There must merely be the silent observation of a fact. There is no end in view, but awareness of everything as it arises. That observation and the understanding of that observation cease when there is condemnation, identification, or justification. Awareness is not self-improvement. On the contrary, it is the ending of the self, of the I, with all its peculiar idiosyncrasies, memories, demands, and pursuits. In awareness, there is no condemnation or identification. Therefore, there is no self-improvement. There is a vast difference between the two. The man who wants to improve himself can never be aware, because improvement implies condemnation and the achievement of a result. Whereas, in awareness, there is observation without condemnation, without denial or acceptance. That awareness begins with outward things, being aware, being in contact with objects, with nature. First, there is awareness of things about one, being sensitive to objects, to nature, then to people, which means relationship. And then there is awareness of ideas. This awareness, being sensitive to things, to nature, to people, to ideas, is not made up of separate processes, but is one unitary process. It is a constant observation of everything, of every thought and feeling and action, as they arise within oneself. And as awareness is not condemnatory, there is no accumulation. You condemn only when you have a standard, which means there is accumulation, and therefore improvement of the self. Awareness is to understand the activities of the self, the I, in its relationship with people, with ideas, and with things. That awareness is from moment to moment, and therefore it cannot be practiced. When you practice a thing, it becomes a habit, and awareness is not habit. A mind that is habitual is insensitive. A mind that is functioning within the groove of a particular action is dull, unpliable, whereas awareness demands constant pliability, alertness. This is not difficult. It is what you all do when you are interested in something, when you are interested in watching your child, your wife, your plants, trees, birds. You observe without condemnation, without identification. Therefore, in that observation, there is complete communion. The observer and the observed are completely in communion. This actually takes place when you are deeply, profoundly interested in something. Awareness is a process of release from the action of the self. It is to be aware of your daily movements, of your thoughts, of your actions, and to be aware of another, to observe him. You can do that only when you love somebody, when you are deeply interested in something. And when I want to know myself, my whole being, the whole content of myself, and not just one or two layers, then there obviously must be no condemnation. Then I must be open to every thought, to every feeling, to all the moods, to all the suppressions. And as there is more and more expansive awareness, there is greater and greater freedom from all the hidden movement of thoughts, motives, and pursuits. So awareness is freedom. It brings freedom. It yields freedom. Now, when you have a profound experience of any kind, what is taking place? When there is such an experience, are you aware that you are experiencing? When you are angry, at the split second of anger, or of jealousy, or of joy, are you aware that you are joyous, or that you are angry? It is only when the experience is over that there is the experiencer and the experienced. Then the experiencer observes the experienced, the object of experience. But at the moment of experience, there is neither the observer nor the observed. There is only the experiencing. Now, most of us are not experiencing. We are always outside the state of experiencing, and therefore we ask this question as to who is the observer, who is it that is aware. Surely such a question is a wrong question, is it not? The moment there is experiencing, there is neither the person who is aware, nor the object of which he is aware. There is neither the observer nor the observed, but only a state of experiencing. Most of us find it extremely difficult to live in a state of experiencing, because that demands an extraordinary pliability, a quickness, a high degree of sensitivity. And that is denied when we are pursuing a result, when we want to succeed, when we have an end in view, when we are calculating, all of which brings frustration. But a man who does not demand anything, who is not seeking an end, who is not searching out a result with all its implications, such a man is in a state of constant experiencing. Everything then has a movement, a meaning, and nothing is old, nothing is charred, nothing is repetitive, because what is never old. The challenge is always new. It is only the response to the challenge that is old, and the old creates further residue, which is memory, the observer who separates himself from the observed, from the challenge, from the experience. You can experiment with this for yourself very simply and very easily. Next time you are angry or jealous or greedy or violent or whatever it be, watch yourself. In that state, you are not. There is only that state of being. But the second afterwards, you term it, you name it, you call it jealousy, anger, greed. So you have created immediately the observer and the observed, the experiencer and the experienced. When there is the experiencer and the experienced, then the experiencer tries to modify the experience, change it, remember things about it, and so on, and therefore maintains the division between himself and the experienced. But if you don't name that feeling, which means you are not seeking a result, you are not condemning, you are merely silently aware of the feeling, then you will see that in that state of feeling, of experiencing, there is no observer and no observed, because the observer and the observed are a joint phenomenon, and there is only experiencing. Awareness is a state in which there is no condemnation, no justification or identification, and therefore there is understanding. And in that state of passive, alert awareness, there is neither the experiencer nor the experienced. Sir, what I am saying is not very difficult, though you may find it verbally difficult. But you will notice when you yourself are interested in something very gravely and very deeply, this actually takes place. You are so completely submerged in the thing in which you are interested that there is no exclusion, no concentration. Awareness is a state in which truth can come into being, the truth of what is, the simple truth of daily existence. It is only when we understand the truth of daily existence that we can go far. You must begin near to go far, but most of us want to jump, to begin far, without understanding what is close. As we understand the near, we will find the distance between the near and the far is not. There is no distance. The beginning and the end are one.